Hello and welcome to the internet's one and only podcast about comic books. That's right. This is Crying in the Book Club, a podcast where three emotional friends talk about comic books that make them emotional. It is episode the 35th. I am here with John Luke Botbill. Hello.
Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm doing good. And Alex. Hands
Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I did most of the intro right, I think. John, you listened to the old podcast more recently than I ever will because I will never go back and listen to a thing that I was already on because I was there. I don't need to hear it again.
There are plenty of episodes of the old podcast you weren't on.
That's true, and I did listen to those before I brute forced my way onto the show.
You did good. You didn't nail my cadence, but I'm just so unique.
I was going from pure memory, so
yeah. And you didn't do the thing where I would always fuck up the end of the number, where I'd say like 35ths or 32nd. You remember how I would do that.
That was a good bit, and I did forget about it.
Yeah. I mean, initially I just misspoke, I think, on one of the episodes, but then Chad and Alex found it funny, so I kept doing it.
It was good.
Chad's no longer with us, but, we have Emily.
Chad will be with us in like an hour and a half, Alex.
But not with you, the listener.
No. As far as you're concerned,
you've got us, and that's it.
Yep.
And for that, I'm sorry.
We're here to talk about Grant Morrison's Action Comics of the New 52, and technically, I didn't do the notes for this episode, so I'm not really hosting.
I can take over. You got you did the intro. Alex is holding up his hard copy of the Volume 2 trade. Is that Volume 2? Oh, that's a hardcover.
Do both of you own this in physical?
I own it in physical, yeah.
Nice.
But my comics are not with me.
Sure, yeah. So. Well, I mean, you moved recently, so.
So it's weird. I got Volume 1 hardcover, Volume 3 hardcover, and then Volume 2 is a soft cover. So
I have all three volumes in hardcover. I bought Volumes 1 and 3 in hardcover last year because for years I've only owned Volume 2 because I found it in a used bookstore in The Hague while I was there for an MUN trip for like €5, and it was the hardcover, and it had like a ding in the top, so it was like really marked down. And I was like, "Oh, I love this book. I'm copying that." And then I just did not buy volumes 1 and 3 for close to 10 years. But then last year, I finally was like, "Oh, I should get these," because I reread it at the beginning of last year in like March or something. It's like, "Oh, I should make sure I own these." This has happened with many books where I've been like Hawkeye. I owned volumes 1, 2, and 4 forever, and I've bought volume 3 like 6 months ago.
It was so expensive for the longest time. Like you couldn't find volume 3 of Hawkeye.
I don't even know why that is. Anyway, that's not particularly relevant to what we're talking about today, but if you care about my physical comics collection, I will be happy to talk with you about it. The long boxes sitting in my parents' basement that I miss every day.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like it would be kind of fun to do an episode where we just talk like vaguely, not like go in depth or like read any of the books specifically, like, but talk about some of like the favorite things that we do own in physical. Because I don't own a lot of comics anymore, but I have quite a few on my bookshelf.
We could do the class. We could do the classic, like, just name every issue you have, and I'll be like, Aquaman number 1, Aquaman number 2, all the way up to
number
like,
3.
Future's End number 1 to Future End number 52, which I hope we get to do for this show.
I own some really weird stuff physically because I used to just sit in my comic book store and go through their like 50-cent bin and just buy anything that looked vaguely interesting. So I have a lot of like random issues from just runs that I, in some cases, have like never even read the full run, but just bought an issue of it because I thought it sounded cool. And now I have like just
very
random
few
issues of Blue
floppies.
Beetle or whatever. Oh, I have I think 3 long boxes of floppies. So it's a problem.
Yeah, I have like random Star Wars comics that I bought when I was a kid just because I
Oh
like the
yeah.
cover. And then I don't think I actually ever read them until I was like 5 years later.
I have like most of the Knights of the Old Republic comics because those were some of the only comics that you could get in Kuwait. Like random, like the grocery store that my parents shopped at would like randomly have them.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I would get them there. But like that's like the only comics you could get over there. Although that's not true. I once found an issue of Superman that had Wonder Woman on the cover and Black Sharpie crossing out her cleavage. Uh, I the next time I'm home, I'll actually I'll try to dig that issue out because it's pretty funny.
That's a collector's
incredible.
item. That's great.
Yeah, but anyway, that was not an issue of the Superman book that we are talking about today.
No.
Which some people might think we talked about Grant Morrison's Wonder Woman Earth 1 a couple of weeks ago. It's their take on the iconic DC character Wonder Woman, and we want to do another book by them on another iconic character. Obviously, we're going to do All-Star Superman, right? Like that is the iconic Grant Morrison Superman book.
Screwed up.
But you know what? Fuck All-Star Superman.
It's
I love All-Star Superman, but everyone's talked about All-Star Superman. We're talking about the underappreciated, under-discussed New 52 run on Action Comics, written, of course, by Grant Morrison. Most of the art is by Rags Morales, but there are a ton of fill-ins on this book. You've got Andy Kubert, Gene Ha, Travel Foreman, Brad Anderson, Mark Probst. You actually kind of got a murderer's row of artists in terms of people who were like big names at this time in comics. So that's kind of cool. And then also you've got a bunch of backup stories written by Shali Fish, which are related to the story, but we'll get into those, probably touch on them here and there. This is, of course, part of the controversial New 52 relaunch. Morrison's Action Comics reimagines a sort of young Superman at the very beginning of his career as a superhero. At the time that this came out back in 2011, some of the early issues sparked a decent amount of controversy around around a number of things. Everything from why is Superman
the fact that he's fucking based? Is it that he's based as hell?
That did not do him many favors amongst comic book fans, as you can imagine. But also, people were really mad that he was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, which, first of all, t-shirt and jeans rocks. Like, who doesn't wear t-shirts and jeans? He's got the cape. He's got the S on the t-shirt. It's fine. I love the plot detail that he like has to... He bulk orders the t-shirts too. That comes up later. It's really good.
So good.
But yeah, the Superman is portrayed especially in the early issues of this series, is a lot more brutal and a lot more like outwardly political than some past portrayals of the character. Those didn't really end up playing a super big role in the rest of the run, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. As I alluded to, this was like hyped up because it was Morrison's return to the character after All-Star Superman, which was critically acclaimed, loved by fans, has an animated adaptation to this day. Kind of
is a book I've heard of,
which is huge. If Emily's heard of a superhero comic, it's probably pretty big. It's up there with like Kingdom Come in that like exclusive club of books Emily's heard of. So before I get into the plot, there's just a couple things that Morrison themselves said about the book contemporaneously that I think are interesting to know.
Okay.
The first is that they actually didn't plan out most of the story. They included the character who turned out to be the arch villain, Vindictivix, in the very first issue of the book. But despite that, Morrison had like a loose idea of where they were going to go with the book, but did not have any firm plans set in stone, which is why, and again, we'll talk about this, but the story takes some really crazy turns, like especially around the halfway point and towards the end, that I don't necessarily feel like
an interesting book.
It is an interesting book. They also kind of framed it as, I mean, this might be a little bit extreme, but kind of a rejection of contemporary like comic book storytelling. They did an interview with Entertainment Weekly when their run on the book wrapped up, and they said that and I'm quoting them here. Everyone's trying really hard to do the 3-act structure and write comics like movies, do it by the book. But you know what you can do in comics? You can do anything. So what I did was to have the impossible happen. And then they went on to say, here's a comic that would never get by a committee. This is true weirdness. I'm hoping it will be an actual experience for people. I want it to be almost psychedelic on that level. People should go check it out because it's psychedelic Superman. So, you know, they were definitely not particularly interested in writing a conventional superhero series with this book, which is in some ways very on brand for Morrison and in other ways not on brand at all, because sort of despite a lot of their weirdness and the stuff that they like to put into their books, like they have written a lot of like just great by the book superhero comics over the years. So just thought that was something that would be interesting to, as we get into more about the book, something to keep in mind. It was also funny because when I was reading interviews around the time that the Action Comics run ended, they were starting to talk about having working on Wonder Woman scripts for what would eventually become Wonder Woman Earth 1, which I thought was kind of cool that
hell yeah,
these projects sort of blended into one another. So, but yeah, I guess I can get into the plot summary. I'm going to try to be brief, but again, there's a lot that happens in this book.
How's your pronunciation, Jean-Luc?
Oh my god.
There's not a lot of vowels in this book.
Before you get into it, like, there were so many, like, every time I see one of those names, it's like, I can't even, and I've heard some of them said out loud, so I know that it's possible, but, like, it's like my brain totally, like fogs over, like my eyes glaze over, and I just have like accepted that that's not a word that my brain can comprehend. Like I just like kind of skip it and keep going.
And see, that's why you would get absolutely rolled by Mr. Mixelplix, because you could not even fathom saying his name backwards.
No, I can't even say it forwards.
Exactly. So good thing we don't have Emily flying around with a cape and a logo that means hope, because humanity would be in for a bad time.
Very.
All right. But yeah, so Morrison's Action Comics, it actually starts off fairly straightforward. The very first issue introduces young Clark Kent in his t-shirt and jeans, Clark Kent, Superman, going after evil billionaire Glenn Morgan. You might be like, why is that not Lex Luthor? Well, that's because Lex Luthor's not quite on the scene yet. You know, he's also in the early stages of his career. So you kind of have this dichotomy of like Superman going after Glenn Morgan as Superman and Clark going after him as a journalist. But in typical superhero fashion, we can't just have a story about evil billionaires. There's got to be a cataclysmic world-destroying threat, which is when Brainiac shows up. Everyone's favorite Superman villain Brainiac shows up, kidnaps most of the city of Metropolis, shrinks it down into a bottle, takes it onto his space station, and Superman flies up to help him. Brainiac also, by the way, working with Lex Luthor to try to get to Superman and salvage part of the human race. In the end, Superman is able to, shockingly, defeat Brainiac and save the city of Metropolis. But not before Brainiac sort of tells him about why his motivation for doing this. Brainiac is not... It is a different version of Brainiac than the traditional Brainiac, who goes sort of planet to planet, just building a collection of different cities and bottles from those planets because he thinks it's cool. This Brainiac is doing it as a way of saving small remnants of societies from being destroyed by something called the Multitude. So Superman defeats him, but is sort of haunted by that. In the background, Glenn Morgan is taken down. We see this impish little figure who looks a lot like Dr. Psycho. It's not Dr. Psycho, but it does look like him. Just sort of hanging around in the background, maybe hatching some plans. It's very New 52 in that way of like, there was like Pandora and The Question who were like hidden in issues, and Morrison's kind of doing his own version of that, but way cooler. The next arc sort of revolves around Superman's secret identity as Clark Kent starting to unravel and be revealed. First, his friendly landlady, figures out that he's Superman, and next he gets a tip off from the person that he sold the Kent farm to that somebody has been looking for him, and that somebody is the hunter Maxim Zarov, who has also figured out Superman is Clark Kent. And so what does Clark Kent do? He fakes his own death and invents an entirely new secret identity as a firefighter. And continues doing his thing as Superman. But he has a funeral. Jimmy and Lois think he's dead. Well, everyone thinks he's dead. But he's able to keep his identity secret until Batman shows up and tells Superman about the power of journalism and how important it is to have good journalists like Clark Kent on the beat, covering stories, getting the word out to people, and making their lives better. And what can Superman do?
Wasted 5 years of my life. It's the reason I went to journalism school. That issue that
exactly.
you with Batman. So,
well, I hope that's not true, but if it is, that's kind of awesome.
Maybe.
But Batman, as we all know, the number one fan of journalism in the DC universe. If I think of one guy who probably loves journalists in the DCU,
that really did strike me. I don't want to get derailed. That really did strike me as kind of odd.
It's definitely not who I would have expected to say, tell Clark that he has to maintain a secret identity as a journalist. That did not 100% make sense to me, but you know what? We'll let it go. It's a different version of Batman. This is the new 52 Batman, not the old Batman that we're all used to. Batman, friend of journalism, Bruce Wayne aside, Clark goes back to his apartment and his landlady's there waiting for him. And he tells her, because, she knows, he says, we're bringing back Clark Kent. Clark Kent is alive again. And she says, great, Clark Kent's alive again. You know what? I can actually make that happen because I'm actually, and this is the one I'm going to have a hard time with, Nixel Gisplint.
Yep, exactly.
Nix. Who is a fifth dimensional imp who has spent her life ensuring Superman is ready for his showdown with the evil fifth dimensional imp, Lord Vindictivix.
Talk about the imp in the machine.
That really does feel like Grant Morrison didn't know what they were doing at the beginning, where they're like, you know what? Let's make this lady from the fifth. Yeah, and she's been the whole life. Oh, yeah.
Fuck it. I gotta fix this somehow.
To be fair, Morrison loves the fifth dimension. Batmite, iconic part of Grant Morrison's Batman run from the fifth dimension. Mixelplex, Mixelplex turns out Vindictivix got his ass. He was just smoked in the fifth dimension. And you might think that it's Vindictivix. I'm able to say it so easily because it's spelled like, vindictive. It's not, but there's a very helpful moment where Clark sounds it out in a panel and tells the reader, this is how you pronounce Vindictivix. Which, when you learned how to say Vindictivix, you just want to keep saying Vindictivix.
You can't stop saying
it. Sounds really cool.
They are really fun to say, like Vindictivix, Mixelplex.
The mouthfeel on those is great.
Shout out to Mixelplex, who has a really cute and great design in My Adventures with Superman.
I have not gotten the Mixelplex episode of My Adventures with Superman, but I'm looking forward to it.
He becomes kind of a major player in My Adventures with Superman in the second half of the season. So,
worth watching show.
We stand Mr. Mixelplex.
I, as a member of this podcast, officially endorse that show. I think it fucking rocks. There's a kaiju fight in the penultimate episode of the season that absolutely just rocks. It's so good and fun, and I'm really enjoying it. Except it did have the side effect. I tweeted about this on my comics Twitter, but it did have the side effect of I'm so used to those versions of the characters now that when Jimmy Olsen showed up in this comic, I'm like, why are you white? Because I forgot that he's white.
You clearly haven't seen Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice.
I mean, no, wait, no. Actually, I did, but it's just been long enough that I have been able to put it out of my mind. I did remember that he like is in like a scene in that movie.
He gets shot in the face because he's a CIA agent.
Yeah.
He's just like Jimmy Olsen's a front.
It's like around when they do the fucking like hallucination thing for like the version of the DCU that
it's
never
no. It's when the American government gets really mad at Superman for blowing up a Predator drone.
Yeah.
My favorite plot point from that movie. But anyway,
I'm sorry.
Where were we? Oh yeah, we were at the big reveal about the fifth dimension, and we had to talk about Mr. Mxyzptlk. I love the idea, by the way. I don't know. We'll get to that. We'll get to this later. We'll talk about Mxyzptlk and all that stuff at a later point. But now is probably a good time to mention that throughout these issues, every time it seems like you're supposed to like get another big story beat, instead there's like what seems like a completely unrelated side story that happens, which takes a bunch of different forms. There's an issue where the Legion of Superheroes has to go back in time to save Superman. There's an issue that takes place on Earth 23 where Kelvin Ellis who is the Superman of Earth 23, has to battle an interdimensional corporate IP version of Superman. There's an issue where Crypto, the Superdog, comes back. There's an issue where it's revealed that Lois's niece Susie is a futuristic neo-human with superpowers. There's an issue
totally not a mutant. They're not mutants.
Yeah.
No.
Legally distinct from
mutants. Yeah. There's an issue where Superman has a showdown in the future on Mars with the Multitude. But all of these stories are revealed to be like key essential moments in the battle with Vindictivix that is happening as we speak through all time, at all moments of all time throughout time and space. Superman and Lord Vindictivix are battling, and it has caused a massive chain reaction through time through time and space that has brought all of these other characters into the fold. And it's revealed that the Multitude that Brainiac referenced at the beginning of the story was a trick played by Vindictivix after he offed Mxyzptlk to strike back at Superman. And that trick came from the fifth dimension at different times and places, impacting different worlds. And at the same time, but also decades apart, Superman's father, Jor-El, and Superman himself, Kal-El, were the only two that were able to repel the Multitude, which caused Lord Vindictivix to have a grudge against the House of El, and specifically Superman, because like can't do anything about Jor-El, he's dead, and caused him to swear vengeance and fuck up Kal's life. Vindictivix is the reason, and this is another thing, by the way, people were really mad at this at the time, but Vindictivix is the reason that Superman's parents are dead in the New 52, as opposed to old continuity where, they were 6,000 years old somehow and had lived for decades and decades and decades. The final showdown between Superman and Vindictivix happens across time, with a bunch of Superman's allies and Vindictivix's anti-Superman league showing up to engage in battle with one another. And in the end, Superman is able to defeat Vindictivix. How else? By convincing everybody at the same time to say their own names backwards, thus channeling the power of words from the fifth dimension and destroying Vindictivix and his anti-Superman league.
The greatest
comic
culmination. Wait, just fantastic.
Any questions?
No.
No, I think we're
How
good.
can I have any questions?
I mean, as soon as you said Vindictivus, my eyes glazed over, but other than that, I think we're good to go.
So,
what a comic book.
What did you guys think about Grant Morrison's Action Comics?
I'm interested in what Alex has to say as someone who had read this previously. I'm interested in what this was like on a revisit. Had you, when was the last time that you read this?
I read this, so I picked up the trades for it like 2 years ago or something like that. A year ago, I probably picked up the last one.
Mhm.
So it was a book that like I read during New 52, and I didn't love it at that time, so I don't think I read all the way through. And I kind of bought
Not a
into like
believer.
no, I was reading
Hey,
Scott
Alex,
Snyder's
Alex the
Batman.
hater.
It's true. I was like, well, Scott Snyder's Batman. I can only read 30 New 52 books. I don't have room for Action Comics. Um, I
You
actually
guys
read
read
more of.
so many New 52
Oh my
books.
god! Honestly, me and John Luke
52 of them.
can start our New 52 show again because there's just like so much brain damage I have from that. It's just so much. But that's not the point of this sentence, I guess. Yeah. So I mean, I read it sort of, I guess, recently where I really liked it. And then reading it again, I quite enjoyed it. But the first time I heard about it was back when New 52 was about to begin. They did they did a San Diego Comic-Con panel where they had all the creators basically doing, a panel and talking about their books, and they released it as a podcast. And it was like a 2.5 hour podcast,
Ooh.
and it went over each of the lines. And I just remember Grant Morrison with their fantastic Scottish accent being like, Superman, he's the champion of the oppressed, yeah, and that's what we're doing in this book. We're going back to his roots, and he's Superman. We're gonna be really weird with it. And I was like, that sounds really cool. That sounds amazing. And I think
But
this
you were
book
not a
really.
fan when it came out.
I don't know. It just maybe like I always had that moment where I'm like, that's really cool. But I had dumb high school brain that was like, well, Scott Snyder, the god of
Yeah,
comics,
that's
I
fair.
gotta read that. So that was, yeah, and then I just think it's
Alex
such a
was just taken by the massive amount of Starfire cleavage in Red Hood and the Outlaws #1 that, his brain couldn't process good comics at that
I did
time.
buy issue 1 of that book. I did not buy issue 2.
John Luke, real quick, did you have like your earbuds still in? Did you get
Yes.
to hear Alex's impression of
Grant Morrison impression? Yes, it was
Thank
beautiful.
God. I was so devastated in the moment thinking that you might have missed that.
No.
Anyway,
we
we
don't live
keep
in that
going.
world. Right. What's my summary? Where was I going? But yeah, it was really cool. Like hearing those. I mean, those podcasts were cool. And then they were like on iTunes, and I think I have them on my computer. So I can't find them anywhere else.
Fun.
But it was like they ran through all the lines. The other guy was Paul Cornell, who had this British accent. He's like, I'm doing Demon Knights.
Oh, really Paul good. Cornell fucking
really
rocks.
cool.
Yeah?
Sex in
I
it
love
and demons.
I've never heard of this guy.
Wow.
Oh, Paul Cornell is like the only good Brit.
Wow, you heard that here.
It's a short list.
The overall question was what I thought about this book, and I just think it's such, like, the first 2 issues especially, it's such a distillation of like Superman in his earliest form when he's in the 40s, and he's just like beating up mobsters and like beating, he like someone's doing a bit of domestic violence, he throws him out a window kind of thing, and you're like, yes, that's great, that's the way to do it, that's what Superman should be doing. And then it just gets weird, and I love that Morrison, in his Batman run and everything, he just clearly loves the Silver Age. And this is such a Silver Age inspired wacky comic that also is like so core Superman. And I think it's really good. I mean, we talked about comparing it to All-Star and stuff, and I think there are things in this that I just like enjoy a lot more, but All-Star is still quite amazing. So
yeah, sorry, I don't mean to get in front of Emily's thoughts, but that point that you made about the Silver Age stuff, Morrison has talked about that with this book in particular, that one of the things they wanted to do was intentionally write Superman somewhat inconsistently from issue to issue to try to incorporate different attitudes from different eras of comics. So you would get that sort of like machismo 90s era stuff in the same book, maybe not in the same issue, but in the same book as you would get that sort of like 30s, 40s sort of like social justice stuff that was much more prevalent back then, which is kind of
that's actually pretty dope.
I'm not entirely sure how well it works because
sure. I mean, it's not something I noticed.
No, yeah. me neither. But it is a cool idea going into the book.
Yeah,
but
it's
anyway,
ambitious for sure.
Very much so. Emily, as the person who has read the fewest superhero comics and also the fewest Grant Morrison comics,
Superman.
Yeah, where did you
like I said in the beginning, Superman is base as hell in this book. Especially just like right out the gate, base as hell was like really exciting for me reading this book. I didn't really know what to expect. At some point between when we talked about doing this book and when I started issue 1, I completely forgot that this was a New 52 book. So it was kind of a jump scare to see the New 52 on the cover of the first book. Because I guess this is my first New 52 book, because I don't think I've read any of the other ones. And I probably won't unless we do them for this show.
Oh, we will. Oh, we will.
I think we gotta vampire pill you at some point.
Well, I mean, I like vampires, so I'm already on board.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I wasn't really sure what to expect because I didn't really know that much going in, other than it was written by Morrison. But I really enjoyed Wonder Woman Earth 1, so I was pretty excited about that. And yeah, this was just like, you know, like, it didn't occur to me while reading it that Morrison did not know where they were going with the plot. But when you say that, it's like, yeah. But, like, not in a bad way. Like, I had a great time. Like, even though this involved a bunch of characters whose names make my eyes glaze over and stress me out to think about trying to pronounce.
What, you're not a Saturn Girl fan?
Ooh, fuck the Legion.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed, first of all, you guys know I love Crypto the Super Dog, and Crypto the Super Dog was like pretty prominent in this book, so I was pretty pumped about that. But yeah, just overall, like, I had a really good, yeah, there he is. Alex is holding up a page, like the last page of the comic or whatever, where he's in.
Where Superman is hugging Crypto, the Super Dog. Yeah,
it's cute and great. Yeah, but I was excited about that. It just overall, like, I thought this was a really fun book, and I'm glad that this was an excuse to read it.
I'm glad that you feel that way, because I felt like, you know, this is one that is a little bit inaccessible. So I'm glad that you ended up liking it.
It's wild.
Yeah,
that
I mean,
it's a New 52 title.
It was like, I won't say that I didn't like kind of struggle reading this a little bit. Like, I can't really quantify what I mean when I say that, but there was something about it that, like, I did kind of have to like really like focus on the words I was reading. But I had a great time.
Did you guys ever have an experience in college where you took like a political theory or philosophy class and you were given a text that you were not prepared for at all, that is written in, you know, extreme, like, you know, extreme academic language by somebody who's never talked to a person before?
That was the comics version of this.
That is how I felt reading this book in 2011 and 2012. And I, unlike Alex, I actually did enjoy it, but I was so lost when I read this book the first time, which is kind of crazy that it like ended up leaving an impression on me that I would like go back to it a few times like later in the future, because it definitely was not, you know, if you'd asked me at the time, like, what are your favorite New 52 comics? This is not one that would have been up there, but now I would say it definitely is, now that I have much more grounding, and also I think in more of an appreciation for the weirdness of this
now
book.
That you're smarter.
That's actually, that's such a good comparison, because like it didn't, like, in the moment I didn't make the connection that I was feeling the same way that I felt when I was reading a text that was kind of out of my depth, but like that's really how I felt reading a lot of this book. But it was like a lot of the texts that I ended up reading for college, because I mostly enjoyed the classes that I took. I still had a good time.
It ends up feeling kind of rewarding when it all sort of like comes together, which is one of the aspects I like about it the most. Because like even reading it, and I just read this about like maybe a year and a half ago, but still the experience of like when you get like 5 issues in or whatever, and immediately you're in this like weird Legion issue, you're like, did I miss something? Is there an issue? Is this a crossover? And it's not. Like, no, it's not crossing over with anything. There was a Legion book. There was a Legion book not connected to this at all.
Paul Levitz wrote that.
And it's not just that issue, right? Like they do that big like reveal, like they do the big reveal about his landlady at the end of I think issue 12, and then issue 13, he's like on Brainiac's space station being haunted by Dr. Zadu and figuring out how to get crypto back, and you're like, wait, shouldn't we be getting like exposition about what just happened? Like, shouldn't I be having this explained to me? And Morrison's like, nah, I had this really cool idea for a one-off. But then you get to the end and it all coalesces and comes together, and it's like, oh, all these people are here, and you can sort of figure out why each of those like pieces mattered. It feels like a puzzle almost, that like once you get to the end and it all connects and you see the whole thing. Even if like, because this is my experience with this book still, you're not all the way convinced that it's actually good. You're just like, this is awesome. I don't care. This is evaporating
this
my brain.
Rocks.
And it is an ultimate like, yeah, that's so fucking cool. It is a this rocks type of book.
I just can't believe that they decided, and DC Comics was like, you know what, Grant Morrison, I mean, I'm sure that, they weren't going to say no to Grant Morrison, but this does not feel like a book that like, hey, New 52, we're getting new readers in. We're going to go to the baseline of what these heroes are, which this one, it does, but this should not be if this is your first comic, you're going to be like, what the fuck? And it might be in a good way, but I feel like a lot of people were just like, what?
I have no idea what I would think if this was my very first comic. I think the only thing that made this remotely accessible to me is the fact that I have been, like, tangentially in the realm of comics for as long as I have, even if I haven't read, like, some of the books that would make this make more sense.
Yeah. I'm not sure there are books you can read that would make this make more sense.
Okay, fair.
You just need to be there for a longer time. You just need to be there for a little longer. Or, I mean, like, what if you don't know about the fifth dimension and Mxyzptlk before this book, and you're just like...
I will say I probably
new?
would have been more lost if we had not already read something with Mxyzptlk in it, and I had seen him in the Superman show.
Yeah, it can definitely be a lot to take in if you have, if you have no experience with that. Because at the time I had no idea but it was also one of those things I remember reading at the time where it's just like the flood of like proper nouns and like all this cool shit and this like hinting at like this massive world that exists like just off screen was so exciting to me. And that was like one of the things when I was getting into superhero comics that like really pulled me in, was that sense of wonder and all those references. Like there's so much in this world to explore, and Morrison is one of those writers who just is willing to explore it all. And so you get stuff like this Action Comics run where you have this complete relaunch of the DC Comics line where the characters are younger and grittier and updated for 2011 and all the epic teens in 2011. And Morrison throws up both middle fingers and is like, nope, I'm doing Fifth Dimension. We're doing Legion of Superheroes. I'm doing Earth 23, Kelvin Ellis.
We got kind
African
of multiverse
Superman
shit going on, which is interesting to be reading like now, because multiverse is like the hotness right now. Like literally everything is trying to do a multiverse right now.
And Morrison is the multiverse guy. Like they wrote a book called Multiversity.
Yeah, that was like a 2018 thing, which is like 20 weird.
Yeah. Like Morrison for years has been the guy at DC who's written all the multiverse stuff, has leaned into it the most.
Didn't know that.
In a lot of ways, pisses off a lot of readers. You can listen to like go read reviews or listen to podcasts of like certain Morrison stuff, and it's just people being like, why do they have to go and like bring all this weird shit in? I just want to see Batman punch a guy. And it's like, fuck you. I remember actually I was reading when I read reviews, which is rare for comics these days, but I was reading a couple of these reviews of the current Nightwing run, and the current Nightwing run obviously received very positively. Nightmite shows up in one of the issues, who is the fifth dimensional night imp of Nightwing. And immediately on a dime, people were like, fuck this shit. I hate the fifth dimension. And you know what? I have nothing but contempt in my heart for those people. I love the fifth dimension.
So
and
true.
The little imps that live there.
And people just fear what they don't understand. And,
exactly.
So true.
It's a classic
Exactly.
fifth dimension.
I think one of you added this question, which is a good thing, I think, to go with. But so, Alex, if it was you, Alex, do you want to present it?
Yes. So the question is, what is your experience with Superman and Superman comics, if such a thing exists? Starting with Emily, and then I'll be quiet.
I mean, limited. Like, it's Superman is one of those characters that is so ubiquitous in pop culture that sometimes it can feel like you don't actually have to do any reading, which is not true at all, honestly. But like I really like reading Superman specific comics is not something I've done a lot of. If I end up reading a Superman comic, it's usually like some sort of like Elseworlds thing, or like like Superman's in something else. Like this is the most I've read of like a Superman focused book, I would probably say. And not even like, it's not like I've tried to avoid Superman. It's just like there's so many heroes, and you can kind of let like the big like number one guy kind of fall by the wayside by accident if you're more interested in like Teen Titans and shit like that, which I was. But I mean, I like Superman. I think that I get frustrated by the ways that people see, and I guess it, what kind of high horse do I have as someone who doesn't even read Superman to say, like, it is frustrating when people get Superman wrong, but it's more like when people are trying to subvert Superman because they think that they have to, because, like, they think that that's, like, the cool thing to do. I'm losing the thread on my on my talk about my experience with Superman, but I have a lot of general feelings about Superman, despite the fact that I am very limited in my actual reading of actual Superman comics.
I would not say that I'm like a Superman fan. Like if I think of when I think of characters who like I actively want to seek out comics about them, Superman's not particularly high on that list. He doesn't fall into the like sort of weirder side of, typically doesn't fall into that sort of weirder side, darker side, I guess, of superhero comics that I like. Mm-hmm. The Swamp Things, the Animal Mans, even like the Batmans or the Daredevils of the superhero worlds. But I've definitely read most of like the big Superman stories. Superman for All Seasons, Kurt Busiek's Secret Identity, Red Sun, Death and Return of Superman, All-Star.
I've read Red Sun. We should do that for the pod. It'll be interesting to revisit that.
Mark Millar's Superman Red Sun.
Yeah, I've read it twice actually. I read it once when I was in like high school, and then I read it again like really early college, and so it would be interesting to do like a third trip around the old Red Sun.
It's surprisingly based.
I just really like the Batman design is really what it comes down to. I like him with his hat with the little bat ears. It brings me joy.
I have a vivid memory of reading that book on a bus ride in high school when I was on the way to the March for Life, that I didn't know I was on the way to the March for Life, because I was just told it was a trip to Ottawa, which is the capital city. And we got there. And then we went to like we were like, oh, we're gonna go to like a vigil. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because like it's like, it's a Catholic school. We're gonna go like sing and stuff. And then they're like, no more murdered babies. I'm like, people are murdering babies. And then I saw like no more abortions. I'm like, oh shit, we're 8 hours into this trip. I've been talking to people. I'm like, oh, we're in Ottawa. This is so cool. Wow, we gotta go on a trip. And I had no idea till that moment. And it was like,
oh my god.
So I've tried to be less oblivious since then, but that's my Superman Red Sun memory.
New Alex lore unlocked. That's incredible.
Incredible.
I'm sorry that happened to you, but that is really funny.
It was a fun trip.
Did you talk about your feelings on Superman in general, Alex?
No. Well, yeah.
He should stop murdering babies, is what I think.
He has the power. Anyway, yeah, Superman. It's strange because Superman's a character that I like really have liked, and I think like the ideals of, and just like, oh, champion of the oppressed, and like his greatest superpower is his belief in people, kind of thing. And that's like my favorite angle on it. But thinking about like why I like Superman, like I didn't love him in the Super Friends show. I mean, he was okay, but he was just like, I'm Superman, I'm good. It's like nice. Like I guess the Christopher Reeves movies, but I don't think I even watched those as a kid.
I don't think I've ever seen them.
Yeah, and then getting into comics, like I didn't really read a lot of action comics. Grant Morrison's, and I didn't read George Perez's run there. It was Greg Pak and Aaron Kuder's, also New 52 run, also action comics, but that was like issue like 30, 35. And it was the arc where like Superman, his powers are a little low. He still got it, but then he like gets on a motorcycle and then fights cops, and he's like saving people from getting evicted. And I'm like, this is so cool.
I think great. I had dropped action at that point, but that sounds kind of good.
There was someone in between that it was like not good, and then that's when I jumped on because I heard good things. But it was like, yeah, it was a cool thing. I think it ended up being like the cops were actually evil.
Yeah, they weren't actually cops. Yeah, that makes sense.
But in the moment, Superman thought they were just cops doing bad things, and I'm like, that's sick. Let's do this. So, and then since then, it's just been like, yeah, reading a lot of Superman things, All Star, this Action Comics run, and just really, yeah, he's a cool character. I also saw Man of Steel in theaters, and I was like, I like Superman, but I don't know if I like this. Oh,
I also saw Man of Steel in theaters and was like, well, I guess this probably works for other people.
I think I was just excited that there was a Superman movie, and I was like, I like Superman now. You know what? That's fine. It's a different take. That's cool. It's fine.
Reading this book on the Cursed site is really funny because there are a couple issues that have the banner ads at the top that they used to do in the New 52 era for Man of Steel.
Yeah,
which is just a great little note.
Oh man, and I remember even worse. I don't know if I should be saying this, but Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. I teared up at the end of that movie, watching it in theaters because I was like,
did the Martha scene get you?
Girl, no, you couldn't get that out of me with waterboarding.
I know, but it's you got to get that trauma out to heal, probably. So it was like yeah, and then it was like 90% of that movie at the time I was like this is, and then at the end Superman sacrifices himself, and I'm like that's what Superman would do, and then they're all sad, and then at the end like it's his grave, and then you see the dirt going up, and I was like oh my god, I love this. Yeah, Superman's cool.
Yeah, he's all right. One of the things I'm curious about, and we'll get probably into some of the narrative.
Wait, hold on, pause. I wasn't paying attention. Why did Alex 5 minutes ago send the words Max Landis to our chat?
Oh, just people who get Superman wrong.
Okay.
And are trying to be like edgy and like, ooh.
By the time I saw the words Max Landis on my screen, I had forgotten that thread of the conversation, and I was like, wait a minute.
So he's probably thinking of that video at the time, that like 45-minute video that was really popular among comic book fans, where Max Landis outlines his vision for a series of Superman movies.
Oh.
And this was passed around in Facebook groups that I was in, and forums, and on Twitter as this like,
I recall
absolute,
this
like,
era.
Yeah, and it was like, Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman. The people writing Superman comics don't understand Superman. But thank God for Max Landis, who understands the character and has a good idea for it. And you know what? In the end, those people turned out to be ontologically evil because they were defending a sex offender. And in my life, I have never defended a sex offender, so I win in that,
Jean-Luc won.
Instance.
Max Landis
for being a Grant Morrison fan and not a Max Landis fan. I can't stop.
I mean, that's just having taste, honestly.
Yeah, it's just dubs all around. But as I was saying, we're going to get probably into some of the story stuff, but I'm curious what you guys thought about the fact that the art was changed. There were a lot of artists on this book. Like
Mm-hmm.
issue to issue, it feels like it changes all the time. Is that something that you guys noticed? Did it sort of detract from the overall series for you? Where were you at on the art side of things?
For the most part, it was like the same colorist, wasn't it? Or
Yeah.
was it okay? Because like that really helps when it comes down to art. Like even if you're having like different artists, having the same colorist can really like give a comic like a through line as far as the art goes. So it wasn't that disruptive. Like I noticed that some of the art was different. I guess like until you said how many different artists were on the book, I didn't realize it changed that much. But like I did notice that there were differences, and like it didn't really bother me that much, you know, like I mean that's just kind of it's kind of the nature of like writing a long form story like comics. You know, sometimes people can't always be around for every issue, I guess.
Mhm.
So
Did you have any like standout ones where you're like, "Oh, I really like this art or this artist," or did it all kind of like blend?
it not really. Like honestly, it all like I don't want to say like it wasn't like totally generic, like it wasn't like totally DC house style, but like it wasn't also like super standout. Like I thought that the art was really like expressive, and I liked it gave like the I liked that for this story it felt like Clark had like kind of a youthful energy, because this is like a, you know, starting at like an earlier spot in the Superman career than we're really used to. But there wasn't really anything like stand out for me, I guess. Other like
Mhm.
I liked it. It was just like not like, you know, like
Yeah, I feel
It.
like
Go ahead, Alex.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it looks like a lot of New 52 books looked for how
yeah.
different the writing is, and what Morrison is doing obviously is so different from like the tone and the kinds of stories that were being told in the New 52. Visually, it feels way more in line with the rest of those books, which is kind of interesting, and it makes me wonder if, because Morrison in the interviews that I read before this didn't seem to talk very much about the artists that they worked with, which isn't a reflection on them like being bad or whatever, because I do think the art is good here. But like, you know, when he was interviewed about Earth One, or when they were interviewed about Earth One, they said a lot of very good things about like Yannick Paquette, for instance, and
You
have
gotta.
and sometimes and frequently in interviews they will hype up the artist that they're working with, whereas here it felt like that was not like at the front of their mind, which makes me wonder if the art decision was more on the editorial side of things rather than, you know, Morrison picking the artists that they
Yeah.
necessarily wanted to work with, and that's why you got
Yeah.
this more.
Yeah.
And also like part of it is also just it's probably tough when you have so many fill-in artists, because, and this was a huge thing with the New 52, was like they were so relentlessly focused on getting books out on schedule that they're just
Yeah.
like, fuck it, if we have to have a fill-in artist, we have to have a fill-in artist.
Yeah,
And
I didn't
to
get the
me,
impression that the artists for this book were like selected for like, you know, because they were best suited for the story necessarily. Not that, you know, I don't want to say that sounds mean kind of when I say, but I don't mean it that way. Do you know what I
I don't
mean?
think it's mean. No, I think
Okay.
I think it makes sense that, you know, Morrison is telling this sort of weird, as in their words, like psychedelic interdimensional story, and the book
Mhm.
looks like superhero comics looked in 2011. I mean, there's
Yeah.
an element of it that like maybe it's like, oh, there to a degree, an element of it that sort of fits, that like we're building this mythology, and the mythology sort of reflects the time, and so even though there's all these different eras and stuff sort of blended in, it looks like what comics look like, because that's how the myths and the stories have evolved. So I could see that. I think one of the benefit, it's kind of interesting though, because like I also feel like Morrison not having a hard outline in place kind of worked in their favor, because a lot of those fill-in issues are issues like, for instance, I think it's issue 8, which is the Earth 23 issue, is drawn by Gene Ha. It's the only issue in the book drawn by Gene Ha. And it does, even though it is like, you can call it DC House style, whatever you want to call it. It has that look, but it looks just different enough from the rest of the books that you can tell, like, oh, this is, you could pass off as like, this takes place in a different universe. That's why the visual style is slightly different.
I mean, like, Gene Ha's art style is pretty different from like House style. It's got like it's got a weird glow to it that makes it look like
it does.
And it's not so much in the characters, but so much like the shading and like the thing there.
It's Mikkel Janin-esque though, and I would definitely say that, like, I think there's like degrees of DC House style.
Yeah,
to be honest,
yeah,
and like sure. This is like, maybe further towards one end of the spectrum, but I still think it's on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Of House style.
Just on the art overall thoughts, I really like Rags Morales' art. So he's the one who starts it off, and I just think he's like, his facial expressions are really good, where they're like a little bit over the top, but like not cartoony in a way. Like there's one, like a lot of eyes bugging out, a lot of like really scared people, a lot of like Superman smirking, and I think it like does a really good job of that.
There's a lot of little details in those first few issues, just visually, that are incredible.
Yeah,
but sorry.
Like I think it fits. No worries. I think it fits really well in it. And it's just like I think if this book had all the same artist on it, it would almost feel a little weirder, because this is such a weird book, and having like different artists and this little disjointedness is almost part of the experience. So even if all the art is not like my favorite, and like Rags is definitely my favorite artist on it, I feel like it kind of fits with the somewhat of a mess that this book is, like the wonderful mess that this book is, where it's like, yeah, a lot of weird. And then you also have the backups, who are all different artists,
all different artists, all the same writer too, but different artists. Yeah. It is. I am glad that like Rags Morales gets to both start and finish the book and kind of bookend it, because you get to see him drawing the book kind of at its two extremes. Because at the beginning, the book is really grounded in ways that you don't often think of Superman as being grounded, at least in like the public conscience, or the popular imagination. And then you get to see at the end, Morales drawing like the craziest out there parts of Morrison's run. So it's cool to sort of get to see him do both ends of the extreme. And then, he does do some of those middle issues as well, but like a lot of the fill-ins, the book is it's bookended by, I think, 4 issues of Morales at the beginning and 3 at the end, which I think is good that like they got he was able to both start and finish the book. It does, there are definitely things that seem like were done to sort of accommodate those artists, like using them to draw sort of those spin-off issues. But I think it does also speak to the fact that, like, the way just the model that comics have is somewhat compromised by the fact that, like, you can't have like these actual like creative visions on these books, because they have to stick to these like stringent release schedules. And it's sort of funny that happened to the book that Morrison has talked about as being, sort of about in some ways about like the problems with just sticking to a formula as far as like writing comic book stories go.
Yeah.
Not that it's like intentional or anything, but it is kind of funny that those two things are sort of, intertwined in that way.
Yeah.
What did you guys, we sort of touched on this, and so maybe that we won't spend a ton of time with this, but what did you guys think about Morrison's take on Superman here? Both like in terms of like how they wrote the character specifically, but also how they wrote the world around the character. So some of the more meta elements, but also some of the more like grounded elements of Clark and Superman.
We haven't really talked about Lex Luthor at all, but I think this book does a great job of playing him up as like this genius rich fuck who's just like, I'm always 10 steps ahead, and oh shit, no, I'm not now anymore. Oh well, it's fine. Like he's such a fun cartoony character in this, but not in like I don't know, it's cartoony, but it's not like, it's almost like believable at the same time. He's just like just such a cool character in the background. And I think a lot of the like as much as I think that Morrison gets Superman right here, I think like Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, as much as they're not in this book a ton, really do well. They get like some John Irons stuff, Steel in there as well.
Oh yeah.
And I think just a good job of like, hey, distilling Superman's world and a lot of the main players there. I also like that Mixelplick isn't, the one that we get to see a lot of, because that's like the, Superman villain from the fifth dimension kind of thing. And for them to just be like, oh yeah, Mixelplick's dead. Sorry. But there's a lot of other cool names you're about to hear. So yeah, I think it's cool.
One of the things that I wish got followed up on more was something that Morrison sets up in the first few issues, which is that Clark and Lois are rival reporters working for different papers. And I feel like that is such a juicy angle for drama between those two characters. And I know, like, Morrison, maybe not the kind of guy to, or maybe not the kind of writer to write stuff like that, although, they definitely have it in their range. And it sort of falls into the background when you're talking about like the kinds of things that they're writing about. But every time I read this book, there's a couple lines, and I think it's in one of the first like 6 issues. There's like these little bits where it's sort of hinted at, and I'm like, oh my God, I kind of want to read the story. I want to read the AU comic where they're like rival reporters who fall in love over their mutual love of reporting. Like sort of like an enemies to lovers type vibe.
Yes. Could be so fun. Yeah, I mean, I like Morrison's take on Superman here. Like I said, I said earlier that he's extremely based in the beginning of this book, and I stand by that. I guess I don't have that much to compare to as a novice when it comes to reading actual Superman, but I really enjoyed this book and Morrison's take on like these classic characters and seeing how all this kind of played out.
The political stuff is kind of interesting too, because it seems like reading this in such close succession with Wonder Woman Earth 1, it seems almost like Wonder Woman Earth 1 is Morrison working out, kind of regretting not going further with that stuff in the Action Comics book.
Yeah.
Because Earth 1 leans so hard into that, whereas in Action Comics, it's there at the beginning and then sort of gets forgotten about.
I wonder if maybe like they experienced pushback when it came to those like first few issues, and that
let me tell you, there was.
Well, what I'm saying, I know that there was pushback. I'm wondering if that pushback changed the direction of the story. Is more what I'm getting at.
I would be really interested to know that, and I mean that would definitely play into the whole like sort of throwing stuff at the wall and figuring it out as they go. But also, I think it might just be as simple as like they start off with that, and then they're like, "Oh, well, I have this 5th dimensional imp guy, and that seems like way more important."
You kind of have to prioritize at a certain point,
absolutely.
And I get that.
Yeah. And as much as I would, Morrison writing 18 issues of this is fantastic. At the same time, I would have loved to see them get the like 40 plus issue run or whatever, where they can actually get into all that stuff. But yeah, when you're, writing 18 issues of a book, which is roughly like 3 trades, you kind of only have so much space to play with. But obviously I love that vision of Superman, especially of a young Superman who's still figuring himself out. Yeah. And is just like,
I was immediately captured with this book, like when that was the beginning,
Yeah, and he has all this power and all of these like very intense feelings about the world around him in the ways that you do when you're in your early 20s, as Superman is here. But like unlike the rest of us, he actually can do something about it, and so he does. And it's not. Yeah. There's like a sort of corny way that'll, especially in the last like 5 years, I would say a lot of writers have been like, Superman is going to a climate change protest. And it's like, okay, that's fine. It's fine for Superman to go to a climate change protest, but there's a big delta between Superman dangling a billionaire off a roof and Superman showing up at a protest, So I really like this take on this take on the character.
The arrogance that he has, coupled with his just like need to do good, is just wonderful. It's just like it's the angst, great. but it's like it's pure like positive angst. Like it's wonderful.
Well, and I love that it's like he isn't, like you say, he's an angsty character. He has a lot of like angry and complicated feelings, but he's not evil. He's not doing bad things. He's still the core of Superman. And this is what I think Morrison nails about the character, is that the core is unshakable. The core, like, values and morality and ethics that Superman has, that he got from the Kent, the Kent family, those are like unshakable parts of his character. So even when he has all these other things that would push some people with those powers to do like genuinely horrible things, everything that he does is still good, you know, and that aspect of the character gets maintained despite existing in a, you know, sort of darker version of the world, which I think is really cool and something that, you know, I got to give props to Morrison for.
Absolutely.
But yeah, how did you structurally, did you guys feel like a lot of those like flashbacks and flash forward stories worked for you? Like, I know I've talked about how it's it's still a little jarring for me to read those. So how did you guys feel about those? Did you guys have a particular one that was a favorite that stood out to you? I know, Emily, probably the crypto one seems like you really like that, but if you guys wanted to talk about those, it'd be cool.
I didn't dislike the amount of jumping around, but I didn't love it because it is a little disjointed. Like, it wasn't that hard to follow necessarily. It was just sort of like, I wish maybe it didn't like hop as much.
It's more like, I guess we're here now, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I guess we're doing this now, which is like fine, but like maybe not like exactly how I would have preferred everything like play out. But yeah, I love the crypto one. I'm just like just a fucking idiot. And when that lady said to Clark, like, you've got a spirit of a white dog, like, did not occur to me that this might be related to crypto. I was just like, that's a weird thing for you to say, lady. I'm sure.
Why did you say white dog?
I'm sure I'll find out what that means later. And then like it came back and I was like, oh, buddy.
I also love this reimagining of the Phantom Zone as like this truly like horrible prison where you're not actually in a different like dimension or anything. You just like phase out of, you still see everything happening around you, but you're sort of just like in this phased out state.
Yeah.
It's really cool, but the way that Morrison presents it in that crypto issue is like really like, it's really gut wrenching the way that like because crypto gets, so as Krypton is falling in the New 52, crypto gets stuck in the Phantom Zone. Jor-El and Jor-El ends up putting him there, but sort of by accident. And you see like this sort of like ghost crypto following Superman around, and it's so cute. It almost made me think that dogs are good animals and not horrible slobbering monsters. But it is really adorable, and it definitely fits into the like the long lineage of just like great writers doing these like awesome crypto the Superdog one shots. It reminds me a lot in some ways of like the Kurt Busiek when Kurt Busiek was writing Superman of I think it's issue 712, the crypto issue, which Emily, if you like Crypto the Superdog, you should dig up that issue. It's beautiful. I can find a link for you.
All right, you don't even have to send a link. Just like send like the what I need to look for.
And Emily will buy it at her local.
And I will go to. I don't have a local comic book shop anymore. I will go to the textbook store that sources comic books now, and I will ask them to get it.
To bring this back to the beginning of the episode, that is an issue that I like randomly found at a comic book store somewhere and bought, and it is one that is in my collection.
Hell yeah!
Is that issue of that Kurt Busiek Crypto the Superdog issue?
Hell yeah!
Alex, were there any that like particularly stood out to you of those sort of like side stories?
I liked one of the backups, Farewell. It was just like a short tale, but it was one where when time is going all fucky, he like goes back and he's at his mom and pa's farm, and it's the night they're gonna die, and he gets to like say a farewell to them, which was like a nice little like, aw, I like that. And then at the end, it's like, okay, now I'm off to prom, and I'm like, now they're gonna die. Great. It's like a weird one, but it's nice that there is some closure there.
It definitely feels, at least to a degree, like the Ma and Pa Kent being dead was an editorial decision, and then Morrison just absolutely runs with that in some like really like cool ways. Like, yeah, they were killed by Vindictivix, the fifth dimensional imp, and also we're gonna have this great moment where, and I know this isn't a different issue, but we're gonna have this great moment where, in the middle of his final confrontation, Superman is gonna find himself on the front porch talking to Pa Kent on the night he was going to prom, which is this like amazing little moment between that the two characters have that I think also like. Oh, go ahead.
No. You finish the thought. I just want to
it also like gets at the you know the values that were instilled in Superman by sort of unexpectedly by these farmers from the middle of nowhere in Kansas in the 1950s. But good for them. They're very progressive.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Yeah, it's just like New 52 had the whole thing where like no superhero can have emotional connections to anyone else. No one's married. No one's in love. They're all single and ready to mingle. That was the whole thing. And they like even got rid of like
and it was like sexy and ready to fuck.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, like Justice Society doesn't exist. Fucking. Well, okay, in the first issues, they had a lot of fucking. First issue, everyone's like, I understand the assignment. We're just going to do it. We're just going to do it in 90% of the books. And then they're like, oh, wait a minute. Never mind. Maybe not. But I'm glad we're no longer in a time where DC Comics is like, no one can grow old or have families or loved ones. We gotta be young forever. It's like, Dan,
they should make the characters fuck more, though.
True. More unnecessary sex scenes in comics.
If you want to juice comic book sales, just like go full balls to the wall, literally. Like just, get it all out there.
Wow. Thank you, Image Comics, for having our back.
Real quick, guys, how much longer do you think Chad texted me and asked how much longer he has before we're going to hang out. So
I think we're just going to do the cry space and get out of here, right? So like,
okay,
20 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. I have a final question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, is it the one that is in the doc, or is it a different one?
Yeah. Oh, okay, no.
Okay.
I don't think of new ones. No. But this book, it's literally like, oh, all your life, everything you do is just the battle between you and this guy named Vindictus. And it's like, oh, Riverdale season 7, where he's like the ultimate battle versus good and evil. It's like, did we win? It's like, no, but now you got to go back to the 50s and do good. You got to do good in the 50s. I actually don't know if they're actually going to follow up on that because I've not finished season 7.
Oh man,
so far, like they're not doing good.
No, they are doing good. They're doing good things. It's like they're being really woke and progressive for the 50s. They're talking about bodies and spaces in the 1950s. Alex.
They're mostly just being very horny. Like
and
this
doing
season has been the horniest.
Classes.
This has been the horniest Riverdale, and then last episode, Archie's like,
I think Emily froze again.
Oh no, I'm still here.
No,
I was texting Chad back.
I was like, oh, it's just like, and then Archie in the last episode was like, I'm gonna do poems, and then a character comes in that you're like, do not bring this character back. Are you fucking kidding me? And it's you
just got to that.
It just got to that, and it's like, why are you referencing
Emily? Are you at the point where they bring back the character they should not have brought back? From season 1.
Oh God,
a certain Archie love interest.
No.
Okay, then we'll speak no more.
Oh boy.
It's
that story arc goes places. It's great.
Well, because Jean-Luc, it's like it was that episode, and then we because we watched 3 episodes in a night, and the next episode just started auto playing, and we're like, there hasn't been a musical episode in, and then Archie's in his bed, he's like, I wake up in the morning, and he's singing it,
feeling like
it's great. It's anyway.
It is funny because Riverdale has taken from Morrison in many ways. Like they did that whole multiverse story arc, which does feel very Morrison-esque.
I do love Riverdale.
There's some they cooked a little bit.
It feels very
really cooked with Riverdale.
It feels very like Tales of the Crypt-ish, but also like tied into multiverse. So it's like,
Riverdale was great. They should have done more of it. In my opinion.
They'll do a spin-off. They'll do a spin-off season.
I guess we're sort of at the end, unless you guys have any closing thoughts. Oh, I want to say that the for me, for that last question, the Kelvin Ellis issue is my favorite because I love the idea of a universe in DC Comics existing that is basically our universe where Superman became this huge corporate IP juggernaut. This shockingly predates the MCU really taking over, but Morrison was so prescient in that sort of like superhero thing becomes the monoculture and the sort of
this would have been like right around the time when the MCU was taking off.
Yeah,
right?
It's at the same time, but it predates it really exploding. It's like pre Avengers, but yes, like Iron Man, the first Iron Man
movie, maybe.
Yeah, first Captain America.
Like we were like on our way there, but like no, you're absolutely right.
And then the avatar of that chases is like the big like metallic thing that Superman fights in the end. Is the avatar of like the corporate IP Superman from that universe.
So good. I remember that issue being. I think it might have won an Eisner. I think that was one of the big.
Oh, did
maybe
it really?
It won an Eisner, but it got some good. It was like people were like, I don't know if I like Action Comics, but I like issue 8, and it's
a great issue. Well, it has like a weird like alternate universe Saddam Hussein in it. It's pretty funny.
Jimmy Olsen gets fucked as well.
Okay, Emily actually froze that time. I wasn't gonna. I
was only gone for a second.
Okay. Jimmy Olsen dies in issue 8, so it's a good issue.
Oh, God damn it!
DC loves killing Jimmy Olsen.
Emily froze again.
No. That's just her face.
Who do we think cries the most in Action Comics?
I think. Well, okay, it's a twofer. It's a two. Well.
Oh my God! Okay, I'm back. I swear I'm back.
Okay.
That was a false alarm, I guess. But anyway,
I was gonna say it's a twofer between Superman because he's like, his parents are dead. He's got to let it out. He's got to cry. He probably goes off to space. I feel like Lex Luthor is kind of like, he's very up and down, probably a little, a little emotional. But it's got to be that guy who just has the hots for Lois, and he's like, I love it. Why aren't we talking about?
And they ripped out his heart.
Oh yeah. So I think he cries a lot when he.
Talk about that stuff at the beginning where they're doing like that's another just amazing plot point that like Brainiac is like trying to take like the best creation from every planet, and the best thing humans ever created was a weapon to kill Superman, which is feels very fitting.
It's good stuff.
Emily, who do you think cries the most?
Oh, I mean, definitely that guy. Like he definitely cried the most. They ripped out his real human heart.
They did.
Like they did it for love.
I'm going with Nixilgasplints, the landlady /
she does cry wife, quite a bit
because she is the sole survivor of the. She escapes the fifth dimension after Vindictivix kills her husband Mixoplex, and lives her whole life trying to leading up to the point where she can help Superman to hopefully defeat him in the end. And she is able to bring Mixoplex back as a human, but then he ends up in a coma, and they have a kid who ends up just being joining Vindictivix's anti-Superman league. She goes through a lot. And also another thing I gotta say, I love the portrayal of Mixoplex in here as Mixoplex just loves Superman, and he loves getting owned by Superman. That's his favorite thing about it, is that he can because it's just the if you guys know the very famous episode of the Justice League animated series where Superman is fighting Darkseid, he's like, I can finally unleash myself and go full power. But it's Mixoplex can do that with Superman with pranks because he knows Superman will always put everything right in the end, but he can always just do the craziest pranks before that. And he's Mixoplex just has the ultimate parasocial relationship with Superman. It's so awesome. There's just so many little elements of stuff like that in this book that I think are just these little great, very Morrison moments.
This book is delightful in so many ways.
It's so fun. But do you guys hear that sound?
Oh yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. What does it sound like to you?
Sounds like the award-winning miniseries, maxi-series, multi-series, Doomsday Clock. Jeff Johns, Gary Frank. Talking about it next week.
Damn, that's a depressing sound.
Yep.
I hate. Can we turn it off?
Oh yeah, it's gone.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that sound is signifies the beginning of the Cry Space, which is a segment of the show where we highlight one thing that made us cry this week, something we're trying out, new segment at the end of every show. Is just natural. 35 episodes in is when you're supposed to start introducing new segments to a podcast.
I'm always saying
that. Yeah, always. So what is one thing that made you guys cry since the last time we spoke? I can go first if you guys need some time, but I will hand the floor to you.
I have mine ready.
Go for
it. Formerly up and coming emo band in Alabama that I saw a few weeks ago open for another band that I like broke up this week, and I'm really sad about it because they only put out like one 6-song EP and it fucking kicked ass and I liked it a lot, and then now they're broken up. But I bought a t-shirt at the show, so now I have that forever. But very sad that the band is called Odd Polly. You should definitely check out their EP, which is just called Self-Titled. It's not called Odd Polly, it's called Self-Titled. And
wow, they're so quirky.
They were so quirky.
They were
so quirky.
They were so quirky.
But I enjoyed it a lot, and I was devastated to hear of their breaking up. So I wish them the best. I hear members of the band have their own other projects that they're involved with that I've not checked out yet. But so I will probably be doing that. But R.I.P. Odd Polly. That's what made me cry this week.
Wow.
Understandable. Alex?
So
do you have something ready?
I have two in my mind.
Go for it.
Two in my mind. One is I got... Well, go ahead. Yes.
No, go ahead.
No.
No. I was just asking if you wanted me to go. Well, you picked one, but just do both.
Oh, okay. I thought you could.
Oh, yeah.
I did like 4 a couple episodes ago.
I guess. So this week I was at the Toronto International Film Festival, and after like weeks of trying to get tickets for The Boy and the Heron, new Studio Ghibli film, I was able to get tickets for the opening night. Got to see it. Teared up in the movie. Fantastic. And then even better. It's supposed to be his, Miyazaki's like, I'm done making films. I know I said that like 3 times
before. I've heard that before.
But this time I'm serious. And then, you know what? The song plays at the end, and I Shazam it because I'm like, this is such a nice song and everything. This is the end. This is the end of Miyazaki's films. And Guillermo del Toro was there, and he was like, Miyazaki's great. And his final film, you're in for a treat. I'm like, oh, man, this is great. And the next morning, Tamim, our friend messages me, and he's like, hey, he said, the VP of Ghibli said there's more movies coming from him. I was like...
Yeah, it's because if Miyazaki stops making movies, he might have to talk to his son.
What, you don't think they see each other around the office anymore?
Does that mean that they communicate?
No, Goro Miyazaki is widely disliked as a filmmaker, but no one dislikes him more than his own father, which is beautiful in its own way.
Although Ponyo was Miyazaki's apology to his son, according to Comic Book Resources. So
I could see that.
He apologized to his son.
You just gotta flex on him by apologizing in a film that's like infinitely better than anything Goro could ever even dream of.
It's not fair that the movie he made was the one that they decided to like go away from hand painted art style and do an abomination. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably is his fault, but like, I don't know. I'm sure there was some pressure to like. I got to be different from my dad. I'm gonna make a shit movie. It's like, oh, that's cool.
I mean, there was also probably pressure to do something less expensive.
I mean, he also made like 3. He also made like 2 other movies, So he had a few times up at bat.
You know what? This is my 4th, 5th podcast. I think I'm finally getting it down. The other ones, you can't hold that against me. You can, but yeah. That was a long cry space, but the second cry space, which will be shorter, is the year was 2000, and there I was, a young lad, watching a new show called Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, and in that first episode, Yugi's like, I gotta figure out how to make this puzzle piece that's in this box, and I gotta turn it into a kind of like a pyramid upside down thingy, and he does, and he puts in the final piece. It's like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah. So at Fan Expo this year, they have a model kit where first of all, you put together the pieces of the puzzle separately, and then they don't give you instructions. And it's like 60 pieces. You have to figure out how to do it just like he did in the show, because he didn't have instructions. And in the show, he's like, it took me 3 months to do this. And I'm on week 3. I have 3 pieces together. I've worked on this thing for fucking like probably like 10 hours overall. But yeah, it brings me joy and pain, and it's very cool.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. I had heard that model kit came out, but I don't remember if I knew that you had gotten it. So that's very exciting.
It's so cool that they don't have instructions. And
I
also,
love it.
But also, can I have like a little hint or something? Like I know what the last piece that goes in is, but
that's delightful.
My cry space is simultaneously a sad cry and a happy cry. It happened on Thursday when the NFL season began with the Detroit Lions playing the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. And you know what? They fucking destroyed them. They owned them so hard. And you know what? Some people will say it's fraudulent because the Chiefs did not have Travis Kelce, and Mahomes tried passing to Kadarius Toney a bunch of times, and Kadarius Toney apparently does not know how to play the game of football. But in my eyes, Jared Goff, the boys at the Lions, they absolutely earned it. We're 1-0, 100% win rate in this season. I'm actually really excited. I mean, yes, there were definitely problems with the Chiefs in that game, but it seems like the Lions are poised to have a very successful season this year for the first time in my lifetime.
Wow.
So that's exciting.
Congratulations.
Of course, it is also a sad cry because the Chiefs are like my backup team, have been my backup team for when, you get like halfway through the season, you're like, I don't believe in the Lions anymore. I'm not watching one more Lions game.
Fuck the Lions. All my homies hate the Lions.
Yeah. You need a team to root for, and that the Chiefs have been that team for me because Mahomes is so fun to watch. So it is kind of sad to see them lose, but you know what? The Lions, the Chiefs will probably win every other game this season. And you know what? If the Lions also win every other game this season, they meet in the Super Bowl finals. I'm just saying, Travis Kelce's injured again. Please God, if they meet in the postseason, let Travis Kelce be injured again.
I just made a note to myself. It's a calendar entry. On the day that this episode, around where this episode is going to go up, I'm gonna check in and see how the Lions are doing. This is joyful, jubilant Jean-Luc. We'll see. I hope it's
to be fair, their defense did not have to do that much against the frankly pathetic showing from the Chiefs. But the offense looked really good, and that was really what they made their bones on last season when they went on that crazy run where they had a losing record and then turned it into a winning record by the end of the season. Was they had the best offense in the league. So I think if they can do that again, defense doesn't matter in modern football as much anyway. So we're chilling. We're big chilling. Cool.
Also, just a year ago, Jean-Luc sports, maybe it was like a year and a half ago because you were like watching baseball with your grandpa, but it's nice.
It's been since like 2020. Cool. I've been watching football with my grandpa. Yeah.
You're evolving, Jean-Luc.
I had to stop watching. I had the same experience the last 3 years with baseball where I start watching it and I'm like, baseball rocks. And then the Tigers are fucking awful. And I don't want to watch another baseball.
There's 160 games you have to watch.
Yeah. And I have to watch them just like painfully lose every single one. It's like the 9th inning. And it's like, no, they can come back. They can get 5 runs in 1 inning. You only have so much like emotional energy for that. You can only do that so many times before it caves in on you. But that's enough sports talk, and I apologize for our. Alex and I are probably. I think there's probably 0 listeners who watch sports, and I know Alex and I are the only 2 who care. I'm sorry that we talk about it, Emily.
I love esports. Trying to find it.
Hell yeah!
Shout out to sports.
My other cry space is that my favorite Apex team got eliminated in losers bracket round 2, so they won't be playing in the championship finals.
Mine too. Oh man.
Yeah, well, your favorite team sucks ass. Fuck those guys.
I picked a favorite team like an hour left in the tournament, and then as they lost, I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So sad. The only team that's not transphobic in the entire Apex Legends Pro League.
Hell yeah! Let's fucking go!
They did not make it into the finals, but which sucks because
they're in the finals of my heart.
Yeah. And you know what? They've been top 5 at the last four lands, so whatever, who cares? Anyway, if you want more of that, you can follow us on Twitter at Crying Book Club. You can follow Emily at mpandanata. You can follow Alex at Alex Hansiak. You can follow me at Mountain Dew Liker. You'll probably have more luck following my letterbox though, which is JL Botbill. It's spooky season. I know it's September 9th when we're recording this, but September is spooky season also, and by the time this comes out, it will be October. No, it'll be October soon when this comes out. Anyway, yeah. Lots of spooky season stuff going on over on Letterboxd, so
yep,
you can check that out. Yeah. Yes, Alex?
If you see Max Landis, put a bullet in his brain.
Hell yeah.
I'm kidding.
You can also find Emily on Letterboxd. She's Pandabor over there. And you can find her podcasting empire, Imagine Me and Uchna, Fresh Podcast Market. That looks terrible, which there will be new episodes of. Yeah. But I had to re-edit the Wonder Woman episode because my hard drive died, and that pissed me off. So I haven't edited a podcast episode since I did that.
Don't blame you.
But I will be getting to that maybe this week. We'll see.
Sick.
But yeah, that'll do it. I think we are officially into spooky season, so I think next time we're doing The Crow.
I think so.
That will be our next episode of the podcast, so look forward to that 2 weeks from today. And that's all that I have, so goodbye.
Goodbye.
I'm sorry, Max Landis. Not